Youth Embracing Their Future, a vision we can all support, bringing practical skills to adults and youth so we're all able to live life with courage, confidence, and connections. Welcome back to Discover You, the podcast. Today we're talking about relationships. What are relationships? Why are they important? The components of a relationship, the aspects of the relationship, all things relationships. I have once again with me Sarah, and we are just going to get right into it. So Sarah, why don't you go ahead and start us off with relationships?
Relationships.
Wherever you want to start.
Well, last time we talked a lot about communication, and that's really built into recognizing then, relationships are important because if I'm communicating with someone, I'm probably in some sort of relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
And if we think about how society is built, how things are accomplished, we are made to be in relationship with one another.
Mm-hmm.
We are not created to be alone. We are created to be in some sort of connection, some sort of relationship, whether that is a casual relationship, whether that is a romantic relationship. I don't know how to say it. Like, we're meant to be together. Like, we can't live life without other people. Like, I have a relationship with the bank teller that I stopped at on my way here before recording. Like, we have some sort of acquaintance relationship. You and I have a collegial relationship. I have a romantic relationship with my partner. I have a parenting relationship with my son. So they exist.
Yes, they do. It's funny. It's I play The Sims 4 a lot, which is it's like a simulator game. I don't know, but there's actually you make these people and you're like you make lives for them, you control them and stuff like that. But there is a trait that you like can get by not having your Sims do anything social for 24 hours. And it's called the loner trait. And it it's just like, I don't know why it's made me think of it. It's just like you like don't talk to another Sim, you don't like pick up a phone, you don't go out of your house. It's just like all these things. And it makes your Sims so sad because like they're just like, oh yeah, I don't see people. And then when they do get to see people, they get like bad traits, like they get like bad moodlets and they feel uncomfortable and stuff like that. And just, I don't know what made me think about that, but I did.
Well, and let's contextualize it. So we are all surviving a shutdown, quarantine, pandemic, COVID. Okay, I think collectively society realized relationships are really important. When all of a sudden I'm only having relationship with the 3 to 5 people that live in my immediate household.
Right.
And we talked last time about communication and how we utilize technology to be communicating with people that maybe we wouldn't typically, or maybe it would have been required to have been in person, but I still want to connect and communicate with them. I think that demonstrated to us the importance of relationship and how we're connecting with one another. Just to get stuff done.
Yeah, I think it's you mentioned the like shutdown and being in quarantine and stuff, and like good for you for having like 3 people in your household. Like I had like just my partner and our cat, and like I love them to death.
Yep,
they are my person. I love them, but I like there's like times where I was like, I'm gonna go sit in the other room and I love you, but I just need to get away from you right now. Because like that's all you had.
It's all you had.
It's all you had, and it was so hard. Oh my gosh, it definitely made our relationship stronger. Like in the end, like now we're engaged and we're getting married and all this stuff. But
you discovered you really did like each other.
Yeah, that was the true test. Not being together for how long as we have, but being in a lockdown together for 6-7 months. That was the test.
Well, and we think too about like
strangle him.
Well, and you have a point there, right? So like when we're in close proximity all the time, right? Aspects of our personalities, our natures might not feel as compatible. Yet we can also see how we balance one another and things that I'm good at, you might not be, and vice versa. We also can see that, like you're talking about your sim, like that loneliness and isolation is a real thing. We saw that in nursing home populations where regardless of the quarantine, are they feeling like they're in relationship and connection with other people? But then we think about our penal system, and we put people in solitary confinement as a punishment, and we reduce their ability to connect and relate with one another. That's not how we as humans are designed to be.
Mm-mm.
We are designed to be in some sort of relational interaction with others.
Yes.
I mean, that's I mean, I used to say that if I could have just like studied anything, I would have been a sociologist, because I find it really intriguing how societies grow and develop and all of the factors. But that's how the world and society is created. We are in some sort of communal relationship with other people. Not suggesting that it's easy. I'm not suggesting that it's perfect and beautiful and wonderful, but it is. We are in relationship.
Yeah. And it's important to just touch on that there are different types of relationships. Obviously, we're not all romantic with each other. We don't live in like a giant polyamorous society. But, there is like your family relationships, your acquaintanceships, your romantic relationships, your friendships, your enemyships. I don't know. Like you have people that you just don't like to be around. Your negative relationships. There's all these different kinds, and it's important to like touch on and like teach our youth that it's good to have all these relationships. You are not like confined to just having one of these. You are allowed to be in a romantic relationship and still have friendships.
Yep.
You're allowed to have your family relationships, but your friendships could be more powerful than those relationships. Like that is totally okay. And people always say like, oh, your family is like top tier, like nothing beats family. But there are times where things beat family, and that's okay. Like you pick your friends. You can't pick your siblings and your blood. You can't pick that stuff. But I don't even know where I'm going with that. But you can't you can't pick them, and so like necessarily you can't guarantee that you're going to like those people.
Right.
You can pick your friends, and if your friendships don't work out, that's okay. You can pick new friends. And that those relationships can blossom into beautiful things. And, friendships last lifetimes. So
you really bring up an interesting thing. So we talk about, we know that relationships are important. Let's like just assume that fundamentally, and we'll talk more about like what are the components of relationships. Yet if I don't talk about it now, you're going to ask me later. So we'll just do it now. Like, okay, so why is this important for young people? So we'll just go there. What you're saying is it's okay to have various friendships. It's okay to have various relationships, and those relationships are going to benefit you differently at different times in your life. Even being able to set those boundaries, and how many of us were ever in a romantic relationship in our adolescent teen years, and then we stopped being friends with our friend group. Like all of a sudden, like I'm just spending all of this time with this romantic relationship, and then how did that impact my friendships? Or I'm going to stereotype young women, but like it typically happens in young women groups where it's like, well, we're friends, but now I'm going to go be friends with this other person, so now you and I can't be friends. And the horrible uncomfortableness of trying to figure out where you're going to sit at lunch, and what friend group you're with, and how we group up and we categorize groups of people so that then we feel like we belong, which I think we're going to talk about next time, is that sense of belonging. All of that is figuring out how to navigate relationships in an effective, healthy way.
Yes.
And it's hard.
It is hard. It's definitely not easy, and it doesn't get easier. It's definitely, I think it's the hardest when you are school aged.
Yeah.
Because the only relationships are the ones that you have with your family.
Yep.
and, you know, be it, your immediate family, your extended family, like maybe you're super close with your cousins, but those relationships are the only ones you know. And so you come into a school situation for the first time and you're like,
Yeah.
well, how do I talk to these people? I'm not gonna go and be like talking to Sarah over there like she's my cousin. I don't know Sarah like that.
Yep.
And then transition, now it's lunchtime and I don't have any friends. So where do I sit? Now I gotta like consciously pick a spot that looks like it's going to be an okay spot and hope that I just make friends.
Yep.
And then like clicks and popularity and all the stereotypes that are high school are like, oh, you can't sit there.
Yeah.
That's where the bad kids sit. You don't want to sit there, and you don't want to sit there because people might think you do recreational things on the weekend, So it's just hard. It's a hard balance as a young person. But then I don't know, I feel like it doesn't get like necessarily a whole lot easier, but it definitely gets easier as you start learning more about yourself, like the relationship you have with yourself. Once you start like really figuring that out and like, you're confident with yourself and who you are and what you like and what you do, you tend to like people gravitate towards like people. And I think that's the only reason it gets easier is because you slightly know yourself a little bit more and you can put yourself in situations that you feel like you'll be okay in. But when we're young, we don't necessarily know what situations we're going to be okay in.
Well, and that's part of young development, right? Is figuring out some of those social norms, which I'd love to have a conversation about that another time. Like, how do they become norms and why are we okay with it? But figuring out, what are those dynamics? What are those social norms? What do I truly like about myself? I love how you said, like, you have to first have that relationship with yourself and then develop that confidence to go out and connect and meet with others and maybe learn something new about yourself because someone else has a trait or an interest that you hadn't thought of before. And you're like, oh, that's cool. I'd like to enjoy that. And so
now you're doing it and you're like, wow, I love this. Thank you for showing me this. Thank you for teaching me this thing about myself,
And I think too, you said, we gravitate towards, like gravitates towards like, that's like a chemical principle. Yet there's value, certainly a ton of value in saying, well, what do I have to learn for something that's different than me? But then if those differences exist, how do you navigate that relationship in a positive way?
Yeah, no, it's also like interesting and I just like we need to like teach people about relationships from a young age, like beyond just like talking about them, but just like everything. We just knowledge dump on little kids what a relationship is and how to have them and what a good one looks like, and then it'll be all set. We'll all be better as a world.
Well, I was thinking when you were talking about, the cafeteria and cliques and friendships, and I'm like, wow, but I think we're thinking middle school, high school, but I was like, it does kind of start in kindergarten, right? Like, at least with school age kids, but like, you're right. Like, you're in relationship with your siblings and your family and your cousins and whatever play groups and that kind of thing when you're little. But then you enter into kindergarten and now it's like, well, how are you navigating, sharing that swing on the playground? And, we joke about the things that we learn from kindergarten and being able to play well in the sandbox. Well, we start that at, I don't know, from birth on, how we connect and relate to one another.
And I think a big thing for me is not forcing relationships of any kind. Like, just because somebody is family doesn't mean that you need to put one-sided effort into that relationship. I'm a firm believer that relationships need to go both ways. They need to go both ways. If they're not going both ways, then it's not a healthy relationship. Or if it's not like I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be equal, but it shouldn't be like a 90-10, you know? Maybe like a 60-40, 70-30 on like a bad day. Because, sometimes you just have those days where you don't want to talk to people. You're like, I'm done today. I'm going to go put my head in a pillow and I'm not moving until I wake up in the morning. But in a relationship that's 100-0 that's not like you shouldn't try to force it. If it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. And I think that's important to teach the kids too, our young people. Is like I definitely have family members that they have put no effort into speaking to me or like trying to have a relationship with me, and so I don't put the effort into to try to keep a relationship going. Or like my favorite is the the trio friend group. When you're friends with this person and they're friends with this person, but you guys are always hanging out together. Well, now you scheduled to go to the mall. You scheduled to go roller skating. But that one person you have in common is sick, and so now you feel like you have to like force yourself to be friends with that person. I just don't think you should. Like, if that person canceled, well, I mean, we can try, but like, if it's not gonna if you start hanging out with this person and it's awkward, or uncomfortable, you gotta go now. Just take yourself out of it. I don't know. Like, I don't like to be in uncomfortable situations. So when that stuff happened to me growing up, I would just even still, if I'm like, oh, so and so is having like a get together. Okay, are you going? Oh, you're not going? Well, maybe I won't go then.
Yeah.
Or like this just happened a couple weekends ago. My friend was she wanted to have like a girls' night where she lives. And it was supposed to be like all her friends and then me and my one other friend. And I was like, I think I'm not gonna go. And I mean, they were all going and everything, but I was like, I don't think I'm gonna go because I don't want to be in a situation where I only know you guys. Because I don't want you to feel like you have to stay with me the whole time.
Right.
I want you to be able to enjoy it, but I know that I won't be comfortable if we're not together. So you guys go. And they went and they were like, yeah, it was probably good that you didn't come because it ended up being all of her other friends were really overpowering, and then the one friend that I had was like, yeah, it was kind of awkward for me, and I was like, yeah, I'm really glad I didn't go then because I would have had a miserable time. So you gotta know the relationship you have with yourself. Before you can go out and have relationships with people.
I was just gonna say that. It sounds like you know yourself well, right? So you know what you're comfortable with, and you know. I was thinking even too, boundaries, you know what's okay and what's not. So even going into the the 90-10 or the 70-30, right? We can have relationships that are unbalanced if we're okay with it, if we're choosing that, if we know that's how that relationship is going to be, and maybe there's a benefit or a value being honored with that relationship, even if it's unbalanced. The relationship I have with my mother is very unbalanced, yet it's important to me that I support her as her daughter as she ages. But I know that I'm not receiving from that relationship emotionally. I'm not getting a mother-daughter relationship out of that anymore. And that's just a choice I'm making. I think that's a powerful thing too about relationships is we can choose based on what's important to us and what's okay.
No, definitely. I 100% agree. And you can't let other people tell you, well, you have to have a relationship. You have to have that relationship. No. No, you don't. You do not need to have that relationship if you don't want to.
Well, and I think you then can cultivate relationships. Excuse me. So if we think about ever evolving layer of circles, at the center, let's say is me. And, the first circle that's going to come out for me is going to be pretty small. and right next to me. So those are the people that I'm closest to. Right? Like those are the people that I'm going to call when my world's falling apart. Those are the ones I know I can count on, that I can share my most intimate thoughts and feelings with. Like those are like my people. Those are my people. And then if you go out another layer, that circle gets bigger, but further away from me. So maybe those are like, oh, they're like kind of friends. They're people I see because our kids are in the same sports and our kids have grown up together. And like, I'm still close with them, but there's more of them, but I'm not as close with them. And then the circle gets bigger, and those are like acquaintances, maybe colleagues, right? Again, like that circle is large, so there's probably a lot of people in it, but it is not as close to us as that first circle of people that we're really close with, and but maybe fewer of those people. So if we just think about relationships in that capacity, we have varying degrees of relationships, and we could choose to, it's kind of funny to say it this way, but like we can choose to move people in and out of those concentric circles based on what's important to us.
Right.
And I think that's kind of what I hear you saying is like, if you want that relationship, yeah, invest in that relationship. But if it's not a beneficial relationship, you don't have to.
Right. No. This is a part when I got engaged in December of last year. And I'm thinking about like what you're saying with your circles. I got engaged and I called. I was calling my people.
Yeah.
You know, those are that inner circle. Your very first circle are the people that you got engaged, you're calling to tell. You know? And then it's going out to the like, okay, I texted you. Hey, guess what? My partner proposed. How cool, you know? But then it's the next group, which, like, you know, maybe they saw it on Facebook and they say congratulations and you say thanks.
Yep.
Where I'm struggling right now with my relationships of my circles is, and it sounds so silly, but it's making a guest list. You know, obviously your first circle is invited. You know, it's your wedding party. It's your, it's, you know, it's your important people on your important day. But then you have your next little circle that, you know, you're friends with. You're not as good of friends with, but you're still friends with. Obviously, you want them there. And then you got, you know, it keeps going farther out. And, you know, if you invite some people from your outside circle, what are the other people from your outside circles going to think? Well, how come she didn't, how come I wasn't asked to go? How come I'm not being included in this thing that this other person is? Or, you know, like maybe you have your best friends in like your first circle, but then you have like a family member way out there in your outer circles.
Yep.
Well, how come that friend who she's only known for 2 years is her maid of honor, but me, her sister, isn't, you know? Like it goes back to like you pick and you move people because like just relationships aren't the same for everybody. They're not always.
No, you're good. No, because you're really highlighting just the dynamics, right? And so relationship dynamics are challenging, just like we talked last time in communication. Like, what's the thing I can do to improve this relationship? Maybe there's drawing a box for those of you that can't see us. Like maybe there's boundaries we draw around relationships and say, you know what, this is not okay. And so if I take it back to like young people again, I look at the relationships that I as a parent helped my son cultivate because they were positive relationships based on what we value and what I guess I'm defining as a good relationship. Those are the friendships he has had since kindergarten, first grade, second grade. Actually, just it was the cutest thing ever. He's gonna kill me. I won't give you the image to share with our whole listening audience because then he'll really not be happy with me. I call him his first friend. He has a first friend that lived down the street from us when we first moved, and they met And then they ended up on the same soccer team because, when you're 3, you just get grouped up with people that you live nearby.
Mm-hmm.
And we realized we lived down the street from each other, and his first friend,
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't like in daycare.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're on the football team together now.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to watch them grow up, and his mom sent me a picture of the 2 of them, probably when they were 3, and we were all at the beach together. And now like their first varsity football game together as juniors in high school, and they're so stinking cute. But what was so nice is to recognize they have different friend groups.
Oh yeah.
Like they have somewhat completely different friend groups, but they're still each other's like first friend.
Mm-hmm.
And those friend groups can sometimes intermingle, sometimes they don't. They're not offended when one or the other is doing something with a different friend group. So it's navigating it, but recognizing there's something of value in that long-term relationship that the 2 of those boys have decided is important to them.
Yeah.
Like they can count on each other because you're my first friend.
Mm-hmm.
And so taking a look at, sorry, I kind of rambled too, but taking a look at how are we helping young people pick their friends? What are we basing that on?
Mm-hmm.
So as a parent, I'm very clearly basing it on these are the values we hold in our household. And, these are the kind of friends that we would like you to gravitate towards because of that. We get to do that. That doesn't mean that other people are good, bad, or otherwise. It's just that they're different. So just helping them understand, well, what's important to you about friendships? What are you getting out of your friendships? What are you contributing to friendships? And are these positive, healthy relationships? And if not, then how do you want to move and navigate through that? I just made it, I think, sound simple, but I recognize it's really involved.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Well, being able to figure out like what makes a good friend. I know I have friends that I know it's not a balanced relationship, but we've been friends forever. And I choose to be okay with it. And then if things happen and I choose to not be okay with it, then I say something, right? And then we have conflict resolution, which will be another episode.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into it.
There is. Yeah, no, there is. And it's ever evolving.
Yeah.
It's never stagnant, I would say.
Yeah.
Always changing. Things happen. People grow. Maybe you're friends with somebody and then, you don't talk for a little bit and then you bump into each other and you're like, oh, and they're a completely different person.
Yeah.
I know, like, I personally, when I was in college, my first 2 years of college, I was like really shy. I had like 2 friends that I made. I was really soft spoken and quiet, kept to myself. I was just doing my own thing. But then I went and I worked at a summer camp. And I like came back. That summer, I like learned so much about myself. And like I was surrounded by like, like-minded people who were supportive and told me like, why are you like, at the time I was like with one of my past relationships, and they were like, why are you with this person? Like they like essentially made a bullet pointed list as to why like the things that they did that were wrong. And I just was a person that would have chose to look through it before and settled and said like, yeah, I'm okay with this, because it's just what I thought was. I didn't want conflict. I didn't want any of that stuff. That's not who I was. But after going through this summer at camp, these 3 months that I spent with these people, we did everything together. I like opened up. I stopped taking stuff from people, like taking like bad behavior and like being treated poorly, getting walked. I learned how to say no. I'm a yes man. Hands down, I'm a yes man. My fiance makes fun of me for it because I come home and I'm like, oh, I have this, and this to do. And he goes, you need to say no. And I'm like, I can't.
Possible that he has to say no to me, just so we're all really clear. That could be a topic of another episode. And Sam is like, Sarah, you have asked me to do 5 too many things this week.
But I learned all these things about myself, and I was able to, finally put my foot down and say,
Mhm.
no, like,
Yeah.
this isn't a good relationship.
Mhm.
And there's people that I was forcing myself to be friends with to keep the environment not tense. Not that it was going to be tense if we weren't
Mhm.
friends, but I was like faking it till I made it,
Yeah.
and after that summer I came back and I was like, no,
Mhm.
I don't like the way you do that. I don't want to associate with you. I don't like that you do this thing. So I'm just going to take some time away from you. Like I don't
Mhm.
and that's okay, and I think it's important to like again going back to knowing yourself and the relationship you have with your inner you and how you do things and like your values and your whatever. That's like it's just so important. Like that's like the number one thing
Mhm.
in like a relationship. And with the relationship you have with yourself is you need to be able to know what you need first.
Mhm.
And you shouldn't try to just like please everybody.
And we say all of that, and then I'm thinking about my adolescent self. Like if I would have had an adult say all of this to me as my adolescent self, I don't. Are you kidding me? Like, no, I have to be friends with them because otherwise I'm not going to be like part of the in group. And
Right.
like, oh my gosh, and who am I going to sit with? And how many times? Oh my gosh, I don't want to count. Anyways, how many times like all of a sudden you're on the out group, or maybe you're in a romantic relationship and so you were sitting with like their group of friends
Mhm.
at the lunch table, and then that relationship ended, and now where are you supposed to sit?
Right.
And you've totally dismissed all of these other friends.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh almighty, right? So how do we really help young people navigate this when they're still trying to we're still trying to figure ourselves out, right? And like I had an advanced years on you and still trying to figure it out. So how do we really, I'm just going to go back to good questions. I think we've talked about good questions in the past, like when young people come to us and they're trying to figure out, is this a good relationship or not, like being able to say to them, well, what do you like about this person, or what shared interests do you have? You know, what do they do that makes you feel good about yourself? What do they do that makes you feel not good about yourself? um, and I think there's probably some just core questions we could be asking young people as they start to figure out, are these the kind of relationships I want to be in? I'm just going to come from a parenting perspective. Like, it's cliche, but we all know, like, you can't be friends with them because they're not good for you, because then they're going to go be friends with them.
Extra hard.
Extra hard. Like, extra hard.
Yes.
So just kind of helping young people think through for themselves and maybe develop some of those critical thinking skills around, is this a good relationship? Is this kind of relationship I want to be in? What's the benefit? What am I contributing to the relationship? And so asking some of those questions. Yeah. We looked up for you. So in a couple episodes ago, we talked a lot about Castle's framework around social and emotional learning and the 5 components. One of the components of social and emotional learning is being able to have good relationships. And so we looked up for you what Castle, the collaboration for academic, social, and emotional learning, says about relationships, which I thought the very top one was communicating effectively. So we totally like nailed that last time, like, right? Developing positive relationships. So I think what we're kind of like talking through and navigating right now, like, what does that look like? What does that mean to us? I thought it was really interesting, like demonstrating cultural competencies. And we talked before about like being able to recognize like social norms or recognize similarities and differences, and how that's important in relationships, and just being able to acknowledge that people have different experiences. Yeah.
Definitely.
Teamwork and collaboration, problem solving, those are probably things we're going to talk about in the future. We kind of mentioned them last time when we were talking about the importance of communication, resolving conflict constructively. Yeah. Nonviolent communication. Resisting negative social pressure. That's a big one.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's like, especially with the group of people that we are working with,
Mm-hmm.
we work with teenagers. They're moldable by literally everything. And I feel like oftentimes they feel pressure from literally anything, like like when people were eating Tide Pods. Like why did people do that? But they, like somebody did it, and so they were like, well, if I eat a Tide Pod, I'll be cool. Yeah. If I do this, I'll be cool, So that's a good one.
So my son and a friend of his was the first varsity home football game weeks ago, and there was a party afterwards. So my son can drive, so he was already at school. We drove to the game, so he's driving himself home, and I get the text. Actually, I got the phone call. I should probably go tell him how proud I am that he called instead of texted me, now that I say that. So I got the phone call that was like, hey, are you guys still here? Are you going right home? What's the plan? Right. So I'm generally intuitive enough to be like, you're about to ask me.
You want to go do something. Yeah. What do you want?
What do you want? Like, so I, and we have that kind of relationship. We've built the communication and the trust in our relationship for me to be like, hey, what's up? What's your plan? Well, there's a party. And I listened to him kind of talk through like, like I kind of want to go, but it's really late. And if I go and then I drive home and it's late, it's past driving curfew, right? Like but so-and-so is going and so-and-so is going and so-and-so is going, right? So then you start to have that like social pressure. These are my friends. I don't go.
I'm not, as cool as the rest of them. I'm not going to fit in the friend group. I'm going to be out. They're going to talk about the party and I'm not going to know what's going on.
All true. All true. And we've given him an out that says, you can always blame us as parents. We're happy to be the horrible parents that are going to make you go home if you're ever in a situation that you don't want to be in. We are the parents that are like, you call me and we will not argue and you will not be in trouble in that moment when you call me, when you need me, when you're in a difficult situation. We'll talk about it the next day, but you call me, you use me as the bad parent. I'm totally okay with that. What I thought was super cool is that he ended up staying the night. We texted him later. I'm like, it's probably just a better idea if you don't drive home at midnight. And then the next day he was sharing with us, he had gone with another friend, and that as they were walking in, they were deciding together how to support one another if there were situations at that party that they were not comfortable with. Wow. And like made like a little pact. And I was like, I try to be like, wow, that sounds like you really thought that through. And inside I'm like, yes. So I try to like really just affirm his thought processes and his decision making. But inside as a parent, I'm like, that's super awesome. That's a win. Like, well done.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's so good.
So the point of all of that is when you look at those social pressures, it exists. And so going back to how can we help our young people, is start to help them navigate. How are you making these decisions? What's important to you? What are the support systems you're putting in place, right? Just like you talked about, like knowing those friends that you can count on and be comfortable with. And if you're going to go into a social situation, you've got that. It's like a buddy system almost.
Yeah. I think it's funny you mentioned like having blaming us as the bad parent, saying no. I can count on my 2 hands and my 2 feet the number of times that I texted my mom and I'd be hanging out with a friend or something and I'd say, can I do this? Send. Next message. Please say no. And then it turns into a no questions asked, no. And then it's easy these days. You just delete the one that says please say no. So now it says, can I go to so-and-so's house? No. Okay. And like it's the same thing. And it's like, oh, sorry, my mom said I can't go. Here's the proof.
Yep.
because I had that relationship with my mom, that
Yes.
communication that, she trusted me to make good decisions. And if I was texting her and saying, say no, that it was not a good situation that I wanted to be putting myself into. And she could tell just from that. I've seen people on, Twitter or Reddit, wherever, they have like the X system where you say, you just send an X, and then, mom, dad, grandpa, whoever calls and says, oh, you need to come home. It's the calling your friend from the bathroom at a bad first date. It's, it's like a good escape when you're put in those bad, like, social pressure situations. And I think I like, even like bigger than that, there's like the angel drink at bars. How to order it if you need this, how to order it if you need this. Having those situations be open and available and talked about. It's not bad to text your mom and tell her you don't want to go to so and so's house. It's not like, it's okay to do that. It's okay. And I think it's important to like keep reassuring that, because these people, just because they think you're cool now, aren't going to think you're cool in 20 years. There'll be other things that'll make you cool.
Well, and you mentioned a couple of things in our examples. For one, that trust, right? Like, trust is a key component in relationships. Like, we need to be able to trust one another. And probably a topic for a future episode because trust is a really big deal. It's a huge deal, and trust can be broken and violated and rebuilt. But trust is really crucial in any type of relationship. And that ability to ask for help is a component of, offering and asking for help is a component of a positive relationship. So being able to have that buddy system, or being able to make that text and that phone call, right? So those are those relationships that are in that close circle. That you trust. You can go to them for help. They're also people that you would be willing to help.
I many a times have been the one calling. Hey, I need you to come do this thing. Oh, no, actually, can you come do this? I actually need you to come over and help me with this. Being the buddy. Our team lead at Jefferson all the time says, be a buddy and not a bully. And I just think about that, like, in the sense of, like, be a buddy. You might not know what that person's going. If somebody just texts you and says, hey, call me and help me get out of this situation, you could be hurting that person by asking 50 million questions. Why don't you have somebody else do it? Why did you call me? Like, why did you choose? Like, why? I'm busy, I'm doing something. Like, it takes 4 seconds to pick up the phone and ring. Oh, hey, can you come by and like help me out for a minute? Yeah, we'll talk as you leave. It's all of those things of just like creating the safe space even though you're not there.
Ooh, I like that.
Creating the space when you are not in the same space. And it's really easy if you think about it. It is, especially when you have the close group of people that you have that trust relationship with.
So I have the word courage in my head as you're talking about this, and our tagline is courage, confidence, connections. And so, like, we look at relationships, and that we need relationships, and we need that connection and that belonging. And you spoke earlier about like having that confidence in yourself and knowing yourself, but then also having the courage, like having that courage to step out and build a relationship, or that courage to support someone else in the middle of a crisis. And how those three things in combination are really, really crucial when we look at the importance of relationships and how to develop relationships. We have to choose. We have to choose. Sorry, I'm having a reflective moment.
Okay.
No, because even as adults, I think we intentionally choose relationships and how we're going to develop them and grow them. I encountered an acquaintance through LinkedIn who I had like we actually figured out it was like 3 or 4 years ago was the last time we had coffee, because we had like met in a training together, and then it just kind of didn't go anywhere, and then it popped up again, and I'm like, hey, we should have coffee again. And we had the nicest conversation. We actually have kids similar ages, so that like felt good for me, as we're like talking about transitioning our young people out of the home and into their next stage of their development. And I was like, and as we wrapped up, like we had some business to do together, but then we started talking as friends. And like as we wrapped up, we're checking off the list of like the business. Okay, so you're gonna send this email, and I'll get this to you, and then this, and then we both went, and I think we'd really like to have coffee again together. So it's like intentionally choosing, I think this is a relationship I want to grow into. I think this is someone I want to spend more time with or get to know more.
Yeah.
Because this felt good.
Right. And you just know that. You got to trust your instincts.
Yeah.
That if you feel something good, that it's probably a good thing. And if you feel something bad, it's probably a bad thing.
So let's talk about that, right? Like, I'm going to call it the frenemy. I don't even know if a frenemy is still like a phrase. Like, is that a thing?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that still okay? Thank you. So like, I don't know, when your young person comes home and is like, telling you a story about this friend who's clearly not being a friend. I don't know. I'm at a loss, because I feel like when I was growing up, I actually had a lot of frenemies, and I was not confident enough in myself to end those relationships, because I didn't want to feel alone. I didn't want to feel not part of the group. I was subjected in my own way to that social pressure. So what do we tell kids when they're in a frenemy situation?
I think it's like, it boils down to kind of like what I was saying at the beginning of, don't force relationships. If what you're feeling isn't good, if they do something that just really irks you, really grinds your gears, I guess the saying, burns your chicken. If it really burns your chicken, let it go. I mean, like, I wish like I would have known that sooner, because I was the same way of like, I held on to a lot of relationships because I didn't want to feel alone. But there's nothing wrong with being alone. And the thing that I tell all my friends now is they like come in and out of relationships is if you can't be by yourself, if you can't have a relationship with yourself, how are you supposed to have a relationship with other people? Yeah. And I don't know, like, I just like, it's like my like guiding principle of like, my friend says, oh, I think I want to get on Tinder again. And it's like, okay, why? Well, I don't want to be alone. There's nothing wrong with being alone. You have to be alone to like learn you. Right. And I'm not saying you can't learn you with a friend, with like another person there with you. But we're moldable people, and so we mold ourselves to the people that we're around. And if you're surrounding yourself with frenemies, you're going to mold yourself into become a person who will be a frenemy. That's how I see it.
I'm going back too to, thinking about, well, what's important to me in a relationship? What values do I hold? And do these relationships support that? And having, right, those are big concepts for me to think about as an adult, but then starting to help young people think that through. What about this relationship is important to you? What about them do you like? What about them do you not like? Why?
Those big questions.
Those are big questions, but I think those are the things that would help. You can see my thinking face. They would help, I guess, do some of that critical thinking and that discernment around, is this a positive relationship? And, there's all kinds of quotes out there about like, look at the trajectory of, where your friend group is going, because you're going with kind of thing. And so who do you want to surround yourself with?
It's like that. If your friend jumps off a bridge, are you going to jump off the bridge? Well, depending on the friend, yeah.
Yeah.
So
do you want to do that? And being able, again, having that courage to know if you want to jump off that bridge or not,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to say no.
Yeah. Well, much as I would love to talk forever about all of these things, we do have a short time, and we are coming up on the end of it. Believe it or not. So, do you have any like last thoughts that you would like to just touch on before we wrap things up?
So it's interesting because I didn't really know what we were going to talk about in this episode, and I knew we were going to talk about the importance of relationships. And I think the key kind of summarizing statements, it's going to be plural, I'm just warning you now, is that relationships are important. Like, just as a fundamental truth, relationships are important. We have the ability to navigate, cultivate, adjust our relationships based on what's important to us. And then as adults, how are we continuing to model and represent positive relationships to our young people, recognizing relationships that aren't positive or aspects of relationships that aren't positive and addressing them and helping them then do the same. Because I feel like that ability to be in relationship with other people, and there's all kinds of things that go into it, but that ability to be in relationship with other people is a key factor in health, well-being, emotional success, life success. Yeah. That's what I got to say.
Nailed it.
Nailed it.
Well, always we want to hear from you. Always. So, in the comments on Facebook, tweet at us, Instagram, YouTube, wherever you want to connect with us. Tell us about a relationship that you had that was like made you learn, like you learned from it. Tell us how you learned from it, what you learned, whatever. Just tell us about a relationship that you had that you learned from and how that's impacted you today. I feel like that's a good thing. Like, we want to hear that because we're all growing as people. We're never not growing. So we'd love to hear from you on that. So,
and reach out and connect with others that are part of this conversation on our Facebook and
all of that.
I look at you, you see this face, I'm like, I don't know, I just live on Facebook and LinkedIn. I don't know what to tell you. I know we're on other places. But no, reach out and create, like, start conversations with people that are having conversations on our socials, and create some of those relationships for people that are really working to grow just like we all are.
Yeah. Because maybe you're going through something that they're going through, or something that they've already gone through, and you can be that support for them, which is always good. So remember, listen to us on wherever you listen to your podcasts, or on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, the whole 9 yards. Discover You programs. And next time we will be talking about connectedness and belonging, and what that looks like. So until next time, thanks for listening.